Can you smell what the papa's cooking? Might be meatloaf. Hello, everyone. Bront, CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and I am not alone. I've got my good friend here, Big Papa Drock. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, man, I'm doing well, You know, just living that post-surgery life, bro. You know.
Yeah, I hear that's a bit of a pain in the butt for you. You know. So.
Yeah, literally. But otherwise, man, doing great, dude. How you been?
Not too bad. Got lots of stuff shaking up. Channel's doing well. Free to play is doing well, and you know what? I'm having fun playing Raid Shadow Legends, as you know, most of the time. Hopefully, we all are. So, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about here. Is one of the things Drock's been doing a free to play for a while. He did really well in the free to play challenge last year. He's been playing as free to play off and on since then, and it's one of the things I noticed too. In fact, I had a specific champion in mind that kind of gave me the idea for this video. But I want to talk about champions that you're using on your free to play, because I mean, everyone talks about, oh, you've got these end game champions on your end game account, but sometimes you just got to make do with what you've got on the free to play, or sometimes you're using an end game champion in ways you wouldn't have expected to use them. So we're talking about interesting, creative, or just, you know, champions you lean on that, yeah, they're not the absolute best meta, but they're doing a lot of work on your free to play account. So yeah, I think this will be very valuable for folks. I think it's, you know, a lot of the time it's very easy to focus on, I want the best, I want the brightest champion, particularly obviously in the high-end arena meta. But honestly, not everyone's in high-end arena, not everyone's speed running Fire Knight, not everyone's doing the top-end stuff. So let you kick it off first. What's one of the champions you're leaning on in your free-to-play, and how are you using them?
Yeah, it's so interesting to me, and this is such a fun topic, because really playing the free-to-play for the last year has kind of opened my eyes to so many champions that I would never use on my main account, because I do have so many. But one of the first ones that comes to mind is a champion that I've used in a lot of areas, and that's King Galkabar from the Sylvan Watchers. I like this guy a lot. Like, he's not the best champion. He's not someone that you see people use very often, but he happened to be one of the first champions, first legendaries I pulled on this account, and he's found his way into a lot of the game for me. I use him sometimes for Doom Tower bosses, specifically like the spider or whatever, another spider for the cleanse. I used him in Hydra for block buffs. When I didn't have like a lot of good block buff champions. Like, the downside is he only has one turn on his block buff, so he could definitely use a buff. But this was a guy that actually like let me complete some content that I was struggling to do because of the continuous heal cleanse action, and also let me get a higher score in Hydra. So I'm a big proponent of this guy, and even though, again, I don't think he's anywhere close to like on most people's lists for great champs, he has really helped progress my account a lot.
Yeah, he's in this wonderful tier of good enough, and honestly, that's kind of what you're looking for. Is at a free to play, sometimes a good enough is top tier for what you're looking for. I've got this guy on my alts, and I've used him quite a bit. There's one of these guys I was kind of not sure on booking out initially, because he definitely does need the books. You know, you'd like these cooldowns to be a 3-turn cooldown. You want this to be 100%, but changing buffs into poisons is a great reversal tactic, and the continuous heals, basically, it's, you know, especially for Hydra where you're getting poisoned a lot, it's a great cleanse with healing, and that's just such a great combination. So yeah, great champion. He also can activate continuous heals and poisons when people get attacked under the shield, throws out a bit of a shield here. It's not a top tier kit, but you know, he's like, you know, he's an upper B, maybe a lower A, and I think that's actually kind of a good champion to call out in this stuff. He's a lot of fun. I like him.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, we were just talking about this one beforehand. This is the guy who inspired the video, and people are going to kill me for this because I think people are going to say, what kind of a champion are you talking about? But Geomancer, you know, this dude is obviously, you're going to use him all over the place in PvE content, but he has been one of the stars in Arena for me, as weird as that sounds. And what it is this is a 100% turn meter depletion. So he's actually really good in Fire Knight, for example. In fact, he's part of my Fire Knight 25 team as well because of that turn meter control. He's part of my Wave Clear because of that turn meter control. That is so good, but it's effectively a single turn lockout with the burn, meaning that they get reflected damage on them as well. So it's entirely possible that the person he locks out with this turn meter doesn't even get a turn because of the reflected damage. And if they do, they're going to be hurting particularly badly, and you've effectively taken them. Plus, it's because it's a steal, he gets a second turn. So you can then use the cleanse, so he can actually cleanse people off there as well, the buff cleanse, I should say. So he can cleanse some of the buffs off of somebody else. This can actually be useful for getting through Stone Skin at a very, very early level because you got a chance at it. To be fair, you could also do the HP burn here to get rid of the Stone Skin with the burn and then try to do the Quicksand Wrap and might steal it. That's even better. Just so good. You know, decreased accuracy can certainly help as well. You get enough of that up. Maybe they don't land some of the debuffs that might be critical against your team as well, since it's an AoE. You know, he's not a meta champion under any circumstances, but he's like the 5th guy I take on my teams for live arena. And if they ban him, well, then I know that they're probably a bot, because nobody in their right mind would ban a Geomancer in arena most of the time. But if they don't ban him, I usually can use him to control the fight, and you'd be surprised how many fights I've won just because of Geomancer.
That's awesome. I mean, it is funny because you don't think of him as an arena champion at all, but I mean, like, he's such a versatile champion no matter your account. Like, he's still someone that every once in a while on some of my end game stuff, I'll see him on a team here and there too. But like, when you're a free to play or low spender, he is just a god in so many areas. And for my free to play account, it's the same way. I use him in almost everything. It's nuts.
Yeah. You know, and yeah, to be fair, I'll probably replace him at some point in time once I get another arena viable champion out. But until then, he's the next viable arena champion after some of my nukers and supports. So
use what you got, right? You use what you got.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of that, I'm gonna highlight an epic champion now. So you went epic, I went legendary. I'm gonna go epic now. This champion was truly the hardest carry for me in so much of my content in that free-to-play challenge. It's Vogoth. Vogoth from the Undead Hordes. I love this champion. It doesn't get any use on my endgame account anymore at all. It used to get use back in the day in Arena before they nerfed him, in Platinum Arena even. Like, there was a brief moment in time where Vogoth was the star of Platinum Arena. So this is years ago now at this point, but he was such an incredible champion for my free-to-play account to pull. Like, I wasn't lucky in the free-to-play challenge last year and that I didn't get any really good shield champions. No Miscreated Monster, no Toragi the Frog. I mean, I got cooked on that side of things. Just could not get a solid epic to do things. But Vogoth was my substitute, in that his ability to stay alive, putting him in a Guardian set, his ability to heal people, you know, it really changed the game for my free-to-play, and I still use him in a lot of teams now, and including also, again, still on Hydra for the provoke. It's not 100%, but you know, his ability to take damage and help heal was massive for me during that challenge when I didn't have good protectors or good healers whatsoever. So I really love Vogoth. I also love Vogoth because of the debuff extension on the A1, which is a sneaky good part of his kit and has come in really handy on some different areas of content where maybe I throw an HP burn out there and I'm able to extend it. So this guy, just honestly, such a fantastic champion if you're lucky enough to pull him on a free to play.
Yeah, I agree. He's even got the nice accuracy aura. You can stick him in the front, you can stick him in the back. Honestly, there's value to both ends of it. You want him on one of those two, because you either want him in front to hit the damage, heal everybody else up, and then they can take the damage, or you want everyone else to take the damage and then he heals it back up at the end of it. But yeah, it's nice to see one of these bigger guys, for us bigger gentlemen, you know, showing us stuff in raid, you know. But yeah,
Vogoth looks like what I look like with my shirt off, basically. You know, if you saw me with my shirt off, Bront, you know, that's the physique I'm working with now. You know, it's a very sexy physique.
Yeah, you know, I've had to tell people that Cardiel's not modeled after me. It's probably more likely to be this guy, you know. So, but yeah, he is absolutely amazing. He's super critical in like Bommel runs as well for a lot of the early games. I mean, heck, I still use him on my Bommel teams on my endgame account just because those are the teams I have built. Very, very good champion. Useful in Fire Knight with the triple hitter as well. Useful on Ice Golem to mitigate a lot of the damage there. Just works very well. It doesn't even matter the affinity, honestly, because you're not using him for an affinity tank or anything related. It's nice if you can land this stuff, but yeah, it's all that healing, and everything else is gravy with this dude, and he's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. What are you thinking? What's next?
All right. Shout out to some of the epic nukers on there. One of the ones that I've really liked is Dirindil. I think doesn't get some of the love that he used to, and I think it has more to do with the fact that by the time he came out, most people that were looking for nukers were endgame looking for endgame nukers. But this dude smacks really hard. He's got actually a pretty good kit for an affinity epic. It's just, he's got this one here. It's a single target nuke that ignores 50% of a target's defense. I mean, you know, that's so critical. Throws perfect veil if it's critical. So he doesn't have to kill anybody to get that perfect veil. So he has ways to stay alive on that kit as well. And then this one here already ignores 15% of the target's defense. If you can ignore more, that's that's even better, and fills his turn meter by 10% for each critical hit as well. So if you're using him in Arena, that's a 40% turn meter boost on your nuker while they're doing their AoE, and then he can get around really well to putting the veil on himself, and then he can hide while you circle back around to be able to kill somebody else if you need to. For, like, you know, Faction Wars content, he's got the crit rate in all battles. I don't think I'd use this in Arena because I think that's kind of hard to use in Arena, but it's there if you need it, so it's definitely there. And, you know, his aim one's not too terribly bad either. He gets freeze chance. Not great, but honestly, I've been using him in some PvE content where this freeze has been coming up a lot more than I expected to, which is great. So overall, I think he hits a lot harder than a lot of people give him credit for, and I think that, you know, especially because everyone's like, you know, endgame nukers, endgame nukers, endgame nukers. Tell you what, he's probably my next 6-star on my free-to-play account because I need a third true arena nuker, because right now Kale's my third nuker. He can hit harder than Kale, and he brings me a force-based nuker, which gives me some variety on a free-to-play. Very, very good champion.
Yeah, I pulled him on my free to play, and definitely, like, for the faction crypt, for faction wars, I felt like he was so big in helping me progress initially on that dark elf side of things. So I would agree with you. He's an underrated nuker now. Like, again, another it's so interesting too, because the meta and the way champions are viewed changes over time, of course, as more and more champions get power crept. And I think the sad thing for epics is they never get buffed, right? Like, they don't get buffs anymore like they used to in the past, or nerfs. The game has moved on in some ways. And so it's nice that some of these older epics, which is funny to say about Durandal because he's not that old, but some of these older epics that are still legitimately viable if you pull them today, like, they're still genuinely good in helping progress an account. And I absolutely feel like he fits in that conversation for sure.
Yeah. So he's just, it's a good champion. Again, he's not going to be the end game champion, but I also think that it's some of these epics, they're nice to point out there because Centranos has definitely added a lot of value to epics as well. So if you're looking for a nuker in Centranos, you could certainly do worse than building a Durandal as well, even a late game account.
Yeah, that is very true. Centranos really changed the game in terms of having to level up every champion you get, or, you know, awaken every champion you get, or whatever else. It, like, definitely was different after that for sure.
All right, so what do you got?
Okay, I'm going to go back to the legendaries here, but I'm going to go with a legendary that definitely doesn't get a lot of play on endgame accounts, and has overall bad reviews. But I, surprisingly, for my free-to-play account, this champion was really great in a lot of areas, and that's Countess Lix from Demon Spawn. So Countess Lix, like, look, does she need a buff? For sure. Her cooldowns are rough, and you have to book her, which I think is one of the things that most people would say, don't do it on a free-to-play account, and I understand why, because she requires a lot of books. But I will say this, she brings some really, really, really good debuffs, specifically for Arena and for Tag Team Arena. And for a long time, she featured in my Tag Team Arena and helped me get up to, I think I'm in Silver 2 now, which isn't bad for someone who hasn't, like, hardcore said, I'm going to focus on Tag Team Arena to try to get that mission done. But the big thing with her that I really liked was she has 2 AoE attacks. You can build her for both damage and accuracy, and you can land decreased speed. You can decrease enemy turn meter with the A2. You can also land block active skills, which, though it's not as good as, like, for example, a Warlord or a Yumiko to lock people out completely, it's really like a solid alternative to prevent people from using any of their skills. And certainly if you happen to face a Taurus Marichka and you can get her in Stone Skin, which is not easy to do, but if you can get her in Stone Skin so she survives the counterattack, or even alternatively use her with a reviver, she has ways to help control some of those nastier, more frustratingly challenging champions you might see, especially from a free-to-play perspective. So, you know, biggest downside with her is just the cooldowns are real rough. You have to book her in some ways, unless and only if you're running her where you're just going first no matter what, and she is like your control champion. So that was what I did for most of the time when I didn't have books on her. I just used her in my fast team, and I would, you know, get her out there to drop the block active skills and reduce cooldowns from my existing team, my other teammates that might have gone before her, to potentially strip stuff. But I think this is a champion that if she got like a small buff, could actually genuinely be really relevant. Oh, and I also used her, I forgot to mention, I used her in Hydra as well as a decreased speed. So decreased speed, so big there. And also the ability to reduce cooldowns on your team, never a bad thing either. So I think she's a champion that I don't want to say she's slept on, because she's definitely not the best thing out there, but it's surprising how sometimes champions that maybe aren't the best can still be viable even on a lower spender free-to-play account versus an endgame.
Yeah, and block active skills is actually great for countering mythicals as well. I don't think a lot of people are familiar with that because it's the only way you can lock out the change, because locking their cooldowns out doesn't lock down their transformation.
Yes, that is a really, really viable point. And again, it's like she's more useful now in Arena than she might have been before mythicals even came into the game, for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, if they dropped this to a 6-turn bookable to 4-turn cooldown, I think that'd be probably okay. This to a 3-turn cooldown, and she'd be fine, actually. That wouldn't make her top tier, but that would make her consider using for quite a while, you know, and because you're not looking at everyone doesn't have to be top tier, but you want them to be, oh God, do I need to invest in her? And what am I getting out of this? You know, it's you know, you want something better than that.
Yeah, that's really like the hardest part, I think, of trying to invest in her, and why most people be like, don't do it. And I totally get it. Like, if they just reduced her cooldowns a little bit, she'd be 10 times more viable even without a damage buff, because she's not a top tier nuker by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I think she gets her most usage for me out of, you know, does some damage, but mainly is about control and about, you know, turn meter decrease. So that's the one area where it's like, I wish they would buff the cooldowns so you wouldn't have to dump a ton of books in her just to get her to even a usable area, versus where, like, if she had a 3 or 4 turn cooldown, she would actually become pretty solid then.
Yeah, and I mean, she's got that partnership with Astralon, but I don't think that really does too much for either one of them, unfortunately. It's just, that would actually be an interesting thing to buff too, is if they made some of these partner champions a little better with their partner. I think that wouldn't be a bad option either.
Yeah, it's a great example of those champions launched, I think, in like 2020. I remember, weren't they Valentine's Day champions or something like that? I can't remember specifically.
Yeah, they were Valentine's champions before I was playing, actually. So that, 2020 would probably be about right.
Yeah, 2020 or 2021. And it just goes to show how much the game has changed, right? Like, if you had partner champion come in where their passive is removes run random debuff, I mean, people would be like, what?
Yeah, and I mean, and the only thing he gets from this is he gets a chance to join up when an ally attack with her with the default skills, which is not super exciting either on that end. So yeah, it's just...
Oh yeah, it's the blood flow in there for sure.
Yeah, so, all right, we'll go with my first legendary here, and this is probably not a champion that most people consider to be a bad champion. It's just, there are speed champions, and she's not the meta speed champion by any stretch of the imagination, but I think Morgane's actually very underrated, and she's the only legendary I've actually pulled from shards on my free-to-play account during this challenge here. But that all-era battle, that's just so strong, because I could use her anywhere I want to for this extra speed. The fact that she can steal turn meter in addition to boosting turn meter, in addition to the increased speed, even if this isn't booked. In fact, for a long time, I was using her unbooked. This was still a great arena move, better than High Katoon's, definitely. Plus, she has a base speed higher than High Katoon anyway, so it was easy to use her instead with very little investment, in fact, which is actually one of the nice things about her. You'd certainly like these cooldowns to be better, 5-turn bookable to 4, but 5-turn cooldown on a speed champion's not the worst thing, because they're going to be going fast enough they might be able to cycle around to it again. And I think that this ability to steal a single target's buff, very underrated. And then the True Fear is also another underrated debuff as well. Yes, it's only a 50% control, but especially in Arena, 50% control is decent on an early game, especially when you have people that can't counter a fear in any way, shape, or form. Decrease accuracy, again, very helpful if that's against a boss, so you can use that against, like, Bommel, for example, to decrease the accuracy if you're going to try to go with a resist strategy. It's actually good if you're going to try against the Scarab boss, for example. Lots of bosses that this decrease accuracy is pretty good on. And then finally, an A1 decrease speed. You know, what's not to like about an A1 decrease speed?
Yeah, I think it's, like, definitely she's a champion you wouldn't think of as being viable, but, you know, when you look at her A3, that's literally Shuzen's A2. You know what I mean? Or A3 or A2. I can't remember which one
of the
it
two
is.
Yeah,
A2. Yeah, Shuzen's A2. It's the same thing. Like, it's the same exact skill, and that's a top tier void legendary, right? You know what I mean? Like, so definitely, I think she's slept on in that regard for sure. Where you wouldn't think that she could be a viable speed lead. And to be fair, she doesn't have the same aura. You know, as like a Shuzen. And actually, to be fair, she doesn't put the decreased speed, so it's not quite as good as Shuzen, but it's not far off.
But she's not a void legendary either.
Yeah. For a non-void legendary, pretty close. Only difference is, in fact, you could even argue that it might be better because you're not getting polymorph with her A2 or her A3 like you would on Shuzen's. You know, with Shuzen's, you're throwing out decreased speeds. You're likely to get polymorph. With Morgane, That's not going to happen. You don't have to worry about that. So yeah, I think she's definitely a champion that is more useful than people might realize, and would get more play. I mean, for sure, get play on a lower level account without a doubt.
Yeah, and actually this heal reduction is actually really kind of nice too. 100% unremovable heal reduction for 2 turns on the temporary enemy with the lowest HP. This is also top tier for Amius. She is a top tier Amius champion with this particular skill, just for that, in fact. But this is actually really useful in other areas as well. I found it useful in Arena because, you know, oh darn, this person can't heal anymore. That's a wonderful situation to be in an Arena. So
yeah, it can sneakily win you a game if you get it on the right hero. You know what I mean? Like it's the right champion. Like definitely is a sneaky good debuff for sure.
All right. Got a few more?
I got one more for you. I was looking through here thinking like, who do I like, you know, this is such a subjective thing, right? Because end game for me is very different from end game from someone else. And champions I might mention, you'd be like, oh my God, I would totally use that at end game, right? So it's one of those things where it's interesting to see the differences between everyone's account. But here's a champion that, you know, has gotten use on my account, my free-to-play account, that I never bothered investing into in endgame. And I know that there are some like niche endgame teams that use him, but it's Longbeard actually from the Skinwalk. Longbeard. This guy, overall, his kit is really just all about ally attack. But given how hard that can be to find sometimes on a free-to-play account or a low-spend account, he really was a clutch pickup for me, specifically for Fire Knight. He really, you know, when I pushed into Fire Knight hard, Longbeard was a big part of why that was even possible. And again, like his kit is, he's another champion I think that could use some you know, buffs in areas and maybe some cooldown working, or maybe like reworking some of his damage skills, because other than the ally attack, he's really not doing much for you. But you know what? You don't really have to book him because it only drops his ally attack, you know, amount by 1 turn, by 1 cooldown. So for me, Longbeard, clutch, and also was really big in faction wars and helping me progress in that area as well. So I'm a big fan of him in that regard, at least for a while, because like eventually if you get lucky enough, like I just pulled on my free-to-play account, I just pulled a Podrick, and so now Podrick will be my Longbeard replacement, right? Because he's just overall better. But for a solid year, because I pulled Longbeard, I think I pulled him either, like, can't remember if I pulled him during the challenge or right after. It might have been right after, but for close to a year, Longbeard was the best ally attack champion on my account besides maybe Farkin. So you got to use who you have, right? You got to use who you have. So there you go.
Yeah, you can argue that he's still a top 5 ally attacker, because you've got Mikage that's certainly better than him, Podrick that's certainly better than him, Cardiel certainly better than him, and Lana Tharl as an ally attacker better than him, but not by much. And then this increased damage allies do by 20% on the ally attack. Underrated. The fact that it's 4 allies means basically when it's a normal dungeon team, he's attacking with absolutely everybody. The only time this 4 allies is actually a problem is specifically with Hydra. And that'd be an easy even fix. It wouldn't even call it a buff if they would just make this attack with all allies. So it no longer is one of these things where only place in Hydra where it's not quite as good. That'd be a little help with him without changing much. But yeah, he is one of the ones I actually look for when I do Fire Knight takeovers. He's a very, very good champion. I think he's actually a better ally attacker than the Fat Man, other than the Fat Man's obviously easier to book because he's an epic, but he actually joins in. And when you're talking about hard Fire Knight, 1 extra hit can do a lot of extra damage and help an awful lot on that hard Fire Knight.
Oh, for sure. Like he was so, I mean, honestly, I feel like that's still to this day, and maybe it's not, you might disagree with me, but it's still like one of the absolute hardest pieces of content to do on a free-to-play account in terms of progressing. I think I'm only on 6 now on Fire Knight Hard on my free-to-play, and to be fair, I haven't put Podrick into the team now that I just picked him up in the last couple weeks. But yeah, that's such a challenging piece of content to do, and you really, like, you need specific champions to get it done. Like they're really, like, you have to have certain stuff to have a chance of even doing it, and Longbeard's one of those guys who can open that door for you.
Yeah, it really is. There's like a very, very limited number of freeze champs that work in that particular dungeon, and there's a limited number of the ally attackers that work in that dungeon, and he's in one of those 2 categories, definitely. So definitely good to have, and yeah, I like Longbeard. All right, so I get my final pick here. Actually, I think I'm going to go with one of the ones that I don't think he's actually underrated, because if you see him all over the place, but I think he's one of those folks that I still think people are sleeping on. And I think they should not, and that's Nishak.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Nishak shows up in arena for you occasionally, if I get the impression that you'll see him in-game live arena, and I think that's why a lot of people are really just kind of sleeping on this dude if they don't have him, and why he's very free-to-play accessible. He is a free-to-play solution to Stone Skin Champion, because if they don't have a way to cleanse off or otherwise block these things, and he gets a turn, he will basically knock out your Stone Skin champions unless he's really poorly built. Because you throw these bombs on at 2-turn cooldown, then get the extra turn, and then immediately drop them down to a 1-turn cooldown. The next time anybody in Stone Skin takes a turn, they're dead unless they've managed to resist that bomb. So he's not the easiest build, because you need to build him with a lot of attack, a lot of speed, and a lot of accuracy. But you don't need crit rate or crit damage to do any damage with him, which is great. So it's not as hard as he could be otherwise to build. And, he makes you think twice for Stone Skin. He's very good to be brought in as the last champion in an arena fight when you suspect the other team does have Stone Skin and they can't pivot away to somebody that might be able to cleanse or be able to resist. Really for me, I actually struggle to counter him on my end game account, where I had to make sure I pull, I'll have to pull Freya and the White Queen at the same time and hope I get to keep one of them, because then one of them can either get the block debuffs up really quickly and cleanse, or the other one's got high resistance and can then cleanse. And even then, sometimes I don't get the resist on, because you never know with how much accuracy some of these champions have.
Yeah, Nishak, it's crazy his value surge. You know what I mean? Like when he came out, he was the Bommel guy. That's where he used him. Used him in Bommel, and you didn't think about anything else. Like, oh yeah, I put him in Bommel, use him in my Bommel team. Frankly, I use him in Live Arena quite a bit, and I see him in Live Arena quite a bit, because Stone Skin has become such a large part of the game, and although there are more ways to counter it now than there were before between champions in different sets, the big thing that changed for Nishak that really brought him back in, at least to the end game type of stuff, was pinpoint. Prior to pinpoint, forget it. You couldn't use him at the high end. Now you can. But if you have him on a free-to-play account, he's always been viable that entire time, because his bombs hit super hard, and you're absolutely right. Building bomb champions, way easier to get absurd stats on bomb champions, because you don't have to do crit rate. That just opens up so many options for different builds. And like for me on my end game account, I've got him in 1-turn Stone Skin and in 1-turn, pinpoint. And that's enough most of the time for me to get by, to launch those bombs, not get sheep, and if he gets the bombs out there and nobody cleanses them, it's game over. So he's a champion I wish I had on my free to play, but I started, after he came out. Maybe that's the one thing I would love to see Plarium do is keep introducing former free champions that they gave away, or bring back some of these, good fusions or whatever else for the people that have just started. What can I, it's not going to, other than Ninja, it's probably not going to happen. So we'll take what we can get.
Yeah. And I do have an honorable mention, and I'll give you a chance to think about one if you've got one as well. Sure. On the same sort of wavelength as Nishak would be Gaius, for very similar reasons. Gaius might be a little more viable early and fall off a little later, because while his bombs are still in a 2-turn and he can't really ignite him without taking another turn, and he doesn't get the extra turn, because he sleeps you guys, you can possibly lose that turn. And so early on in Arena, when you don't have Stone Skin, he's a great bomb champion to get him going fast, throw those bombs out there, get that sleep control, and either find other ways to kill them while they're slept, or hope those bombs get a chance to go off and they don't wake up. Both of which are very viable things. So very, very good champion for very similar reasons to Nishak.
I have died to him in Arena on my free-to-play many a time. I hate that champion, which is why he's good. Quick honorable mention for me, this is a champion that has been hated by the community for a long time, and yet somehow has found his way into my Faction Wars team and has made a difference, and that's Nobel from Shadowkins. Look, this champion is still bad, even after multiple buffs. He is still not good, and the reviews reflect that, and I don't disagree. But again, use what you got, and he has helped me progress to the very end of Shadowkin Faction Wars. And so, would I much rather have a better champion? Yeah. Would I rather have a Hariba? Absolutely. But I can't deny that his ability to fear people and decrease turn meter was absolutely clutch in me beating some of those waves, specifically in Faction Wars. Now, do I use him anywhere else? Absolutely not. But, Faction Wars matters. I'm so close to that Lydia, Bront. I'm so close.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I know it's kind of funny, because I think even when they added him to the token trader shop, the advertisement for the Plarium had for that was, you can +1 your ninja with him. Because but they even acknowledge he's terrible. It's hilarious.
I saw that and I laughed where I was like, oh my God, let's talk about the definition of the buffs we did were not good. And it's just funny because he's one of those, there's like a group of champions that have been buffed more than once. And it's like, how do you still get it wrong? Like Pixieel's still a great example of this. Noble's another one.
Yeah. Tila's one of the ones where they buffed her, I think the third time they got it with her. I don't know if it's the second or third time.
Yeah.
You know, she's not top tier, but she's usable now. She's actually very usable right now. So that's...
My favorite example of a champion that's been buffed more than once, but they got absolutely right the last time around is Gergo. Like that's an example of a champion that like it took them multiple buffs, but they finally got him right and like redid parts of his kit to make him effective. And it's crazy that it took that long, but that's a whole nother video. There you go.
Yeah, I think Allele is probably one that I think is going to prove to be that way as well, because the this ignoring defense now finally, and then the multipliers in this getting to be better, make him a much more of a threat in arena than he used to be. And he wasn't like unusable in arena, but he was definitely not great in arena. So hopefully this that helps with him as well. So awesome. Well, we got to go record a video on his channel as well. We are going to be talking about just general free-to-play versus whale life and how that affects both of us on our accounts. So look over at that. That'll be kind of fun. You got any other things to say?
Nah, man. Thank you so much for having me on. Looking forward to chatting more Raid on my channel now. But yeah, I thought this was a great idea for a video, and I hope that your community and your viewers like it as much as I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun. They love seeing you on, and you know, I love talking with you because you're such a great guy. So guys, do get a chance to like and subscribe to both my channel and my video and his channel as well. Give him all the love. He is an amazing dude. So until the next video, that is Big Papa Drock, and I am Bront CatHerder.